Well, good evening everybody. Hope you're having a super Friday evening. Thanks for joining me for this stream looking at the leading edge simulation Saab 340. If you're just hanging out in the chat, do feel free to come and say hello, friendly chat on the stream this evening. At the moment we've got Pilsner in the chat, good to see you again, and Totorico, thanks for joining the stream, awesome stuff. Hey Vinny, good evening, good to see you as well. Hope you've been having a great day down there. Not too hot, not too cold, hopefully. And Black Bocas, hey, how's it going? New name on the stream. Thanks for joining, and thanks to all the new followers in the past 7 days as well. So let's have a look at the aircraft. This is the Pacific Coastal Saab 340A. I found out a few days ago this particular aircraft was scrapped a few years ago, quite sadly, but we've still got it in the sim, and that's a good thing because it's just a fantastic little airliner, very friendly little aircraft. Conquistador del Rey, thanks very much for joining the stream, much appreciated. So this aircraft was updated a few weeks ago. What we've got at the moment is version 1.6.1. It's been updated with most of the post-update issues sorted out. There's still a couple of little issues on there, but nothing that affects us, nothing that stops us having fun with the aircraft. It's a very friendly aircraft, it's a very easy aircraft to get into. It doesn't have an FMS, it's got the Garmin GNS 530, but to be honest, for the first flight this evening, we're not even going to bother with that. We'll just do some VOR navigation, because it's very straightforward in this aircraft and very nicely implemented. So currently we're at Victoria on Vancouver Island, and we're going to fly up towards Kelowna in British Columbia. This is a Pacific Coastal route, although it's normally operated by a Beech 1900. So the Saab's got a fully modelled virtual cabin, including the flight attendant's panel and the stairs and the doors and everything else. And what I want you to remember is that this aircraft was first released back in 2013. It was designed for X-Plane 9, I believe. So it's amazing that it's still being updated, and if you bought it back in 2013, this would still be the same cost. You would only have paid for it once. And I think that's fantastic dedication to the community from the developers at Leading Edge Simulations. Hey Yarding 9, thanks for joining the stream. I appreciate you got to go very quickly, but thanks for saying hello, much appreciated. So it's a very simple aircraft to get started, but one of the oddities with the aircraft is it doesn't have an auxiliary power unit. You've either got the GPU out here, or you have to start one of the engines to get AC power, to get DC power and AC power. It's very straightforward though. So let's get it set up. What we'll do is we'll close the doors first of all. And what I want you to have a listen at, let me just make sure that I've got the sounds set somewhere you can hear them. We'll maybe give this a couple of attempts if it doesn't come out right. But listen to the sound of the stairs going away. If I find the button, there we go. And then we'll close the door. Latch the door. And secure the door. And put the seat back. It sounds awesome. The sounds on this aircraft are amazing. We need to close the flight deck door as well, so it's just this lever here. And we'll close the latch and lift the lock. Yeah, it's very well animated, Vinny. And again, it looks bang up to date as far as I'm concerned. It's a very, you wouldn't know if you didn't know specifically when it was made, it wouldn't stand out as an older aircraft. Hey Patronisa, thanks for joining the stream. A new name on the stream, so thanks very much, hope you enjoy it. What I want to do is to do things a little bit out of sequence in the simulated Saab. I'm going to work on the side panels first of all. That's the parking brake. I'm going to set the flight number into the cockpit voice recorder, and also the tiller. This is the steering tiller here. Now on the real Saab, I believe this is sprung loaded, and you push your hand down on that to steer. You obviously turn it left and right and then release it again. There's no steering through the rudder pedals on the Saab, but in the sim it's easier just to always have that pushed in, I find. If you've got rudder pedals it might be a bit different. And over on the right hand side we'll pull the knob up here for the oxygen supply. Having done that, we'll switch everything on. So we've got the batteries here, the left battery, And in common with lots of airplanes, there's always noises on here. The right battery and the external power will come on. That noise you can hear is the hydraulic pumps. The hydraulic pumps are running when there's external power, so it's charged up the main and the emergency systems. With that, we'll put the avionics on. Check obviously the voltage on the external power is fine. It's a DC feed, I believe, on external. There you go, DC. Essentially avionics, left avionics, right avionics. And it all starts to wake up. So there's no inertial system on this aircraft. All you're seeing here is the heading reference align and the gyros align. There's no IRs to worry about. So all we've really got to do is prepare the aircraft to fly the departure. We do that with the heading and the radio aids. On the overheads, it's top to bottom, left to right, and there's not really much to do at this point. All the ice protection, the windshield heating can stay off at the moment. Coming down here, none of this stuff matters at the moment. The test functionality isn't implemented on this aircraft. I don't know whether that will be in version 2 or not, but I don't really use that on any of the models I've got, so no big deal for me. Hey Amy, good to see you. Hope you're going to keep me on the straight and narrow with the Saab here. I'm not really an expert at the Saab. We've got battery temperatures. If you're starting off the batteries, you've got to be careful about the battery temperatures. Auto coursing is off. The ignition, we're going to start a motoring start, so I'll make sure the ignition is selected off. We'll talk about that in a little bit. I'll put the nav lights on. We've got a fuel already on, the doors are closed, so seat belts and no smoking. Down here, inverters on, external supply is on the meter. This is only the meter control here, it doesn't actually do anything other than select what's on the meter. We've got the generators, which we'll deal with later, and up here, the recirculation, the bleed valves. We'll reset the bleed valves because we're going to take off with the packs on, and the HP bleeds, we've got to leave those selected off for the start. We only put the HP bleeds on when we start. Emergency lights, we're going to leave those disarmed for the time being on the Saab. And that is really all we've got to worry about. You can see I've got a pre-assigned transponder code in there. The gust lock's in our pressurization system. It's all down here. It's set to sea level at the moment for the departure. Anti-skid hydraulics. That's all fine. And down here we've got the power levers and the condition levers. Power on the left, condition lever on the right, flaps. CTOT, we'll talk about that later. And these lovely Collins radios, which work really very well. So let's have a look at the departure we're going to fly. It does feel cozy, doesn't it? It's a very compelling place to be, the cockpit on this aircraft. Our schedule is in about 10 minutes, so we don't want to hang around too long. We just want to get going and launch off here. So Victoria is on the southeastern end of Vancouver Island. We're going to fly up towards Vancouver, and then we'll fly on this Victor 300 up towards the Hope NDB, and then on towards Princeton, and make the approach into Kelowna, which is up here. Let's just look at the departure just now. We're down here on the terminal at Vancouver, and we're going to taxi out. We're going to use runway 27. My scenery doesn't quite match the current layout, so we're going to use intersection whiskey for departure and take off on runway 27. So there's 269, and that's the first thing we're going to set. It's the heading bug. Now you control it down here with this dial, this knob here. I find it's a lot easier to use keyboard shortcuts to set those, so you can do it heads up. And the Saab also has the option of these little pop-ups here, which I find really useful for flying it this way. At 269, we get that just about there. It always goes one or two the other way. See if we can get it. There we go, 269. On the departure then, we are going to fly the Vancouver Mill Bay 8 to Vancouver out towards Mill Bay. So it's basically a straight line towards Mill Bay, and we're going to climb up to an altitude of 4,000 feet. So let's set 4,000 feet for the altitude selector. Mill Bay is 293, so let's put that on the first NDB. Oh, it's there already. I'll put it on the second one as well. So whenever you're doing radio aids, I always find it very useful to keep both of the both sides of the aircraft in sync, unless I'm using the first officer side specifically for something. Hey Russell, yeah, you've not missed much. Thanks for joining the stream. And Captain Crash, no problem at all. YPOC92, good evening. Thanks very much for joining the stream. So we've set 293 on the NDBs here, of the ADF to follow the NDBs. It's going to indicate on this little magenta line here. And after Mill Bay, we're going to turn on to course 306. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use the VOR pointer just to mark that 306. So I'm just going to spin it round, again using my keyboard shortcut, onto 306. So I've got my magenta heading on the runway heading. I'm going to track the magenta needle, and when we overfly Mill Bay, onto the magenta needle here, at the blue needle here, to fly outbound. And then we're looking for 041 in towards Vancouver, 115.9. So let's put that on there, 115.9. And with that, I think we're pretty much set up for the nav. There's nothing really to program. We're just going to fly out on the 346 and capture the 041. It might be useful to remember that 041 as well. So if I put on the second course, I can control the first officer's side separately. That's the little wheel down here. And if I set that to 041, it's just a second reminder. 041. My English is not English Grammar School standard English. I'm from southwest Scotland originally, although my accent does come and go a little bit. So if you need any clarification, just let me know. I don't take offence at that. So we're all set up for the departure. What we need to look at is the performance speeds on the aircraft as well. So I measured this aircraft earlier on for the accelerate stop distances, and it performs almost exactly to the sales figures for the Saab 340. It uses around about 5,000 feet runway for a normal takeoff or for an accelerate stop. So it's not really limiting on most big airports. Up here in Vancouver, in British Columbia, a lot of the airports are a little bit shorter than that. So we just need to be careful if we go into any shorter fields. I think the Dash 8 performs a little bit better off the runway. What I've been working on is these load cards here. The aircraft doesn't come with this at the moment. It comes with about 90 pages of performance manual, and I've kind of distilled that into these little performance cards here. So I'm going to do a flap 15 takeoff. That means my V2 speed is 117. Now, what I would normally do is set that on the bug here. I put it into indicated airspeed mode and set the V2 of 117. But that's going to disappear whenever I start the engines. So, you know, we'll just have to come back to that. But after 117, we're going to climb up to about 1,000 feet above the field, and then we're going to start accelerating, taking the flaps up at 129 knots and climbing to 147 for the en route initial climb. Okay, so 129, 147, we'll put those over here. So 147 and 129, just about there. I don't know if there's a reason they don't have bugs on the left hand side ASI as well. I think that would be pretty useful, but you know, it's no big deal. Once we're cleaned up, we'll climb up at 160 knots. The other thing to look at is the constant torque on takeoff. The Saab needs every little bit of power it's got to climb off the runway, especially on these shorter strips here. I'm going to use the environmental controls, the PAX on, and it's about 15 degrees, so my CTOT value will be 108 today. That's set down here, but we do that on the taxi out. So with that, I think we are pretty much ready to start. So because there's no APU, we're going to start the left engine first, transfer onto internal power, get rid of the GPU, and start the second engine. Delray, I don't really know, to be honest. I don't deliberately mistreat the aircraft. I don't know if it's got advanced failure modelling in it. As I said, it's a fairly old model now, recently updated. But I don't think it's it certainly doesn't have the level of failure modelling you may see in more modern aircraft. So to start the aircraft, it's straightforward. We're going to make sure that the ignition selectors are off, because we're going to do a motoring start. I'm now going to turn the avionics off, the left and right avionics, leaving the essential avionics on. Make sure those bleed valves are selected, or the HP bleeds are selected off. Put the beacon on. Notice down here that on the avionics we've got one nav radio and we've got the comm radio. The reason for that nav radio is because sometimes your ATIS comes through a local VOR, hence why that's powered up on the essential bus. Also gives you something to navigate with if necessary. So just a reminder, it's engine number 1 we're going to start. The start switch is up here. It's much easier to have a key binding for those. So I'm simply going to, oh, let me bring up the torque gauges as well, talk about those in a second. The torque levers here. So I'm going to push the switch to start. You see the engine spins up. Once it stabilizes at around about 25 to 30%, I'm going to lift the lever up and over into start, and then on the overhead put the ignition to normal. We get light off and the engine starts. We'll just keep an eye on the EGT climbing. Yeah, they were posted on the Leading Edge Discord a few weeks back. I'm still working on them though. There's some numbers that are not quite where I want them to be just yet. But I hope to do a video series, a full video series on the Saab in the not too distant future. And hopefully they'll be included with that. So there's the first engine. It's started up, no problem at all. We'll put the generator to reset. And here's one of the oddities with the Saab. It will not transfer the generator when the external power is there. That's not how you start it, Toto. It's weird, but that's how they want it done. Reset it again and then drop the external power off, and we can see that the generator takes it over. It's got some kind of automatic start control, Toto. The other start you can do is a direct start, where you put the you put the condition and the ignition on, and then start it directly. But it's a bit unusual. It happens simultaneously. In the real thing, obviously, you don't have the same mouse and cursor delay. So ready to start number 2 engine. I'll just hold the switch to the start position. There, it's there. Looking for it to spin up. So it doesn't actually admit fuel with it in the start D10 until that ignition comes on, I think is the rationale behind it. It's an unusual system for sure. And here we go. Looks like a reasonable start. Just waiting for it to start unwinding a little bit on the temperatures here. So once it starts to come back down, we know it's a reasonable start. There we go. With that, we'll put the second generator on. I'll cover the little flap there. And then we just have to wait for the generator to come online. So we've got both generators, good voltage. With that, we'll put the avionics on. I can now put the external, the emergency lights can go on. I'm going to leave the bleeds, the HP bleeds closed, but we'll put the recirculation fans on. And then we will put the auto coursing on. And I think that's us on the overhead. We come back down to the condition lever. We lift the condition lever, move it slowly towards the unfeather position, and then we want to bring it back up to the max gate. So all ground operations are with the props up to max here. And this little spike is fairly normal. Thanks Black Bocus, have a good evening, and I hope you check out the rest of the stream. Cool, props are up. We'll put on the standby pitot heating, the windshield heating, and all the lights should go off momentarily for that. And I think that is pretty much us. So all the lights are off on the overhead. Then it's just the normal pilot stuff. We'll set the flaps to 15, check the trims. Coming down onto the panel, I'll put the transponder to alt, and then we've got to remember to reset our autopilot modes. So it's really just the V2 that I need. You see the bug's remembered at 117. But when I put it into IAS mode, it resets, so I've got to set it back to 117. Okay, and with that, quick check on the alerting panel there. We should be good to go. So we've got these gust locks in here as well. We need to remember to take the gust locks out as we taxi off. The taxi routing, as I said, is going to take us basically right along Alpha, cross through to Sierra, Echo and then Whiskey. Have a good look on the outside to make sure we're clear. Make sure I've got nose wheel steering on and parking brake off. Actually, let's put the taxi light on, parking brake off, and we're good to go. It does sound really good, this aircraft. Quick check on the brakes. Now, I use a keyboard binding for my brakes. One of the things that isn't quite right at the moment with 1.61 is the brake binding. The developers have fixed it for the next update for 1.62, and it should be out in a few days, I hope, once they're happy with it. At the moment, if you're using keyboard brakes, you've got to either use the left and the right brakes simultaneously, or you have to hold the toggle button to get the brakes. But to be honest, taxiing around on the ground, you don't really need the brakes. The brakes are only to hold the aircraft when it's stationary. So one of the things we've got to do on the taxi out is a Ctot check. Make sure that the Ctot knob is wound fully down, and then flick both of the switches on. Make sure there's no power increase. Both of the switches off. I've got a joystick button for that, and then we'll reset 108, the Ctot that I wanted for the departure. I always find having these torque gauges or the lever display up here, because it helps correlate what my hardware is doing to what the aircraft itself is doing. Yeah, the props are the brakes, exactly. As long as it's the prop disc and not the prop tips you're using for the brakes, that's the most important thing. If you use the prop tips for a brake, you've probably forgotten the landing gear. Right, crossing runway 32 seems fairly inactive. We could be a safety conscious pilot and put the strobes on just because. There's a good tutorial flight in the documentation that comes with the aircraft, and a lot of performance information included as well. So it's one of these aircraft, it's really worth reading the manual on how to do it. The Ctot stuff can be a bit confusing initially, but all Ctot is doing is adding slightly more power as the aircraft accelerates down the runway. So it gets faster on the runway, the load on the propellers reduces, and the aircraft is capable, or the engines are capable, of applying a little bit more power. If you've flown the 727, you know on the 727, the FlyJSim 727, you keep increasing power until about 80 knots, and then you leave it where it's set. Well, that is all the Ctot system is doing. Take the gust locks off. We'll do a flight control check. Always double check those gust locks, because if the gust lock is in, you'll not be able to get takeoff power. Yeah, no beta range on the TBM, on the SR22 Rosalo. Weather radar's on, and I think that's us more or less set and ready to go. A reminder on the speeds, rotating at 115, V2 117, so 117 to 127 for the climb out, accelerating 1,000 feet above, flaps up at 129 and climbing at 147. Ahead to the Mill Bay, which is magenta, and when it rolls over we'll turn left and track outbound on the 306, which is the blue needle. Yeah, reverse pitch props are common on the big old prop liners. I think they may have been, some of them are electrically controlled rather than hydraulically controlled as well, which could be quite interesting in a failure case. We left the stand on time, that's the first rule of airline flying. As we're taxiing out to Whiskey, I'll just check the alerting panel here. If I was going to switch off the low pressure bleeds, now would be the time to do it, but PAC's on is fine, so I'll push the takeoff inhibit, and that prevents any spurious cautions or any less important cautions from alerting me on the takeoff. I've got 4,000 here, I've got the heading here, Ctot is ready to go, the switches to come on, and we are good to line up. As we line up, the Here's me as we lined up, put the landing lights on, strobes on, taxi lights off. The Antonov 24 has got a peculiar way to do everything, I feel. Every single thing it does is a bit strange. We'll line up on the runway and we'll just talk about the power setting, because you can do this a couple of different ways. Right, so I'll just hold it on those brakes just now. So what I'm looking for is I bring the power forward. You see it comes up through flight idle and the beta range lights will go out, and then the auto coursing arm should come on. I've got to push the power levers far enough forwards to allow CTOT to work. So CTOT can only increase the power by a small amount, so it needs to be close to what I'm looking for, and then the CTOT goes in. You could put the CTOT on just now, and that would work. I prefer putting the power up first of all and then bringing CTOT in, just to make sure they're both functioning as they're supposed to do. We're going to rotate at 115 and aim to climb at 127 following the flight directors. It's important also to bind this vertical sync button here. We'll talk about that as we get airborne. Okay, let's go. So the beta lights have gone out, levers come forward, auto coursing's armed, CTOT, and you can see the power goes up to the 108% torque we're expecting. There's 80 knots checked. B1, rotate. Positive climb. Gear up. I'll pitch to follow those flight directors. Now notice I'm flying slightly fast. I'll just push the vertical sync, and that resyncs the flight directors to 124. That's about where we want it, maybe a bit on the slow side. So lower the nose slightly and sync again. Okay, that's a good position for a climb out there. I'll just follow those flight directors, and they'll give me the speed guidance for the initial climb. At 1,000 feet above, I'm going to lower the nose slightly. I'm above the flap up speed, so I bring the flaps up. That's 2 clicks on the flap up lever. And then I'm basically keeping pushing vertical sync, holding about 10 degrees until I get to around about 147. I'll then pitch to follow the flight directors, and I'll put the autopilot in. So this is the point your colleague would generally be looking after the power levers. So I'm going to use the autopilot to do the flying. I'll just adjust the tracking ever so slightly to follow mil B, and then I'm going to ease that CTOT value off. So watch my torque gauges here. You see it starts to bring them down, and then you'll get to the point where it comes out of the CTOT range, and then I can just nudge it a little bit with the power levers. There we go. Once you're out the CTOT range, wind the knob fully off and then set your torque. 1,000 feet to go. I'll just check my tracking towards mil B. Looks like we're overhead mil B, so I'll turn outbound on the 306. I'll now bring the condition lever back. Now I know it comes back to about 57 degrees for the climb that I want. We'll turn the auto coursing off, which is up there, and I can also put those HP bleeds on. Again, this is co-pilot stuff you're doing just now, so it doesn't matter quite as much. We've got a good radar contact with the departure controller, and they've given us a continuous climb up to flight level 200. So I'll wind up 200, I'll put it back into VS mode, lower the nose ever so slightly, and we'll try and capture about 160. I need to change my VOR target, so I'm going to spin that round. And we're looking to capture that radial outbound. So because it was already armed on the second side, it's just a case of matching them up. There's the departure there, 306 out to the 041. So it's simply a case of pulling the tail of the needle where I want it to go. Pull the tail of the needle till it gets to 306. And that's us climbing away. We can put the prop friction on and the prop sync on. I only have a single power lever on my hardware, so it doesn't matter so much. But down here we can see the props are about 1230 and the pressurization system, well, it is pressurizing as a differential pressure. Pop it into IES hold mode now, and I can adjust the indicated airspeed on the knob here. I'm looking for the Vancouver VOR. I'm going to turn on to the Vancouver VOR. I'm about 30 miles away. So at 60 miles, every degree is 1 mile. So what we're doing at the moment, we're about 10-11 degrees to go until we turn on course. That's about 5 miles till we turn on course. We might be able to see it on one of the other geo-reference charts there. So we're flying outbound from Mill Bay now, and we'll just turn on course inbound towards Vancouver. Is it all making sense so far? Handling the aircraft is fairly straightforward. If we have a chance, if there's enough time in the stream, I'll do another departure out of Kelowna, and we'll use the GPS for that departure, just so that everything kind of makes sense doing it that way as well. So you can see my deviation bar is starting to come in just now. So I'll just turn the aircraft onto around about a 30-degree intercept. I'll put it into nav mode. You can see the VOR and the initiation comes up here. And I will change it from IS mode to climb mode. Now I don't really know why Saab engineers decided it needed both modes, but what you've got in climb is a kind of schedule, so it's going to accelerate to 182 indicated, and as it gets higher it will reduce those back. But notice when you go into climb mode, the aircraft will fly almost level as it accelerates up to the climb target. So just something to be aware of if you're trying to outclimb terrain. And that's really where these speeds here come in. The en route climb speed, that's your minimum clean speed with flaps up 147. If you're carrying ice, you need another 10 knots on that. And these blue speeds will change depending on the weight you've got loaded. But the magenta speeds here, the purple kind of violet speeds even, they will stay the same. So it's a much more simple approach to operating the aircraft if you don't need that performance. We can increase the power a little bit now as well. Looking at the power gauges, I think it's running a touch on the cool side, and also the engine RPM is possibly a little bit faster than it really would be at this point. You should be able to get up to about 800 degrees on the temperature, but I find about 710 is really your limit before you run into the red line here. Again, it's no big deal, it performs very close to what the real thing does, as far as the flight performance goes. Yeah, there's a Yak 40 Captain Crash by Felis with some community updates as well. Looks like we might be climbing through some cold stuff here, -1, so let's put the prop de-ice on and the engine de-ice on. Just keep an eye on those temperatures. Always remember to bring your heading bug around as well. So after Vancouver, we need to have a look at the map and find out where we're going next. And this is where VOR navigation I find is really fun, because you've got something to do. You don't just sit here and watch it fly itself. I know I'm flying the V300, so it's outbound on 057. So let's set that on the other side here so that I don't have to remember that number again. I'll set 057 on the FO's instrument here. Second course turns it on and off, and I'll get rid of it again. Should be fairly straightforward from now on. We're going to track the V300 out. We're going to go up to this Hotel Echo Hope NDB on 245. So we can also bring that up because we're finished with Mill Bay. So let's set 245. this side as well. These radios have got a lovely memory function. You can save a number of frequencies in there. So if you fly the same routes over and over, you've got that capability to make it just that little bit easier. Call dispatch for the off times. Yeah, absolutely. We are Pascal 1532 at the moment, Captain Crash. Off on schedule, as usual. It's just I really like the look of this aircraft, and you have to be amazed at the quality of the aircraft. You see, it's just changed speeds there. That was that pitch up. It went from 180 to 172 in the climb speed. It's quite an abrupt change. Through 100, we can have the lights off, and I need Canadian names for my flight attendant. We'd only have one flight attendant on the Saab. Let's have Duncan today, I think. Duncan's not really a Canadian name, but I know a Canadian called Duncan, so that's good enough for me. Let's have the seatbelts off so Duncan can start work. I think we might be out of the icing conditions as well, so we can have the prop heat off, the engine heat off. We'll keep an eye on the fuel temps just now on the climb. Excellent. Pierre. Oh, we're in the west coast of Canada now. I don't know if there's many Pierres out west. Maybe. One second. This. Oh, I hate spam. Hopefully that's gone now. Where are we? We're 9 miles away from the Vancouver VOR. Is anybody else still seeing the spam in the chat? I hope to get rid of it. It seems to be stuck there. Fun. So, as we get closer into the VOR, it becomes quite sensitive. So I don't want to fly inbound in nav mode. I want to synchronize my heading bug to make sure the magenta target is on there. I'll stick the aircraft into heading mode, bring up the second course to remind myself of the number, spin this one around, and then take the second course off again. Now I can still track inbound towards the Vancouver VOR if I need to. It's still on the needles here, but really, with a few miles to go, it doesn't really matter. VOR navigation isn't really that precise. You're not expecting GPS levels of accuracy. You know, we're still tracking towards it. We're still in the right ballpark, and the departure kind of looks roughly like what it was supposed to look like on the chart. So who in the chat has actually got the Saab? Who's been flying the Saab recently with the update? Most English and French names can pass for Canadian. Yeah, that's true, Vinny. So we are about 2.5, 3 miles up at the moment. So we're probably about 1 mile before the VOR. I'll just make a turn. I'll make basically half the difference. And then we're waiting for the VOR to fly down the left-hand side of the aircraft. And as it does, we'll stick it into nav mode. I think it's well worth it, Captain Crash. It's the thing that I keep coming back to is how long this version of the aircraft has been supported by the developers. I don't know many developers that support their product for that amount of time without an additional fee being charged. It's worth giving it a go, Roslo. It's better in a lot of ways. So there's the VOR behind us. I'll put the aircraft back into nav mode. We've got VOR indicated in white, so it will capture eventually. The Saab's one of the few you don't own, Winston. Well, maybe don't watch the rest of the stream. You never know. The thing I love about the Saab is it does everything at a very moderate pace. You've got a lot of time with it. And it's radio fit. There's something, I think it's a ProLine something. I think this is the ProLine 2 they call it, with the two TV screens and the Collins radios. It's very compelling. Yeah, the one remaining bug that we've got, Vinny, I think, that I'm aware of, is the Glideslope presentation. On 1.6 it was fine, on 1.61 it won't show the glide slope in the PFD or in the HSI, or the ADI or the HSI, but you can still see it on the standby instrument down here. It'd be nice to have it fixed. It's not a big deal, not a showstopper. Bring up the map here. You can see that we're now tracking out on the Victor 300. We're going to go out towards Hotel Echo and then onto track 073. Now let's keep 073 in mind. Then towards Princeton 113.9. Let's put Princeton in there. 113.9. Put it on both sides. 113.9. Now I said 073 away from Hope. But look at this side, it's 245. So 73 and 75 inbound. And that's an important concept in VOR navigation, that you always fly the radial that's set on the VOR, not the initial track towards it, because you're really selecting which radial you want to fly inbound, and they may not always match up to your magnetic heading. So this is a heading of an NDB. That heading is local to the aircraft as you fly away from it. But this is a fixed value that you're flying inbound, so it would be 255. So for my first officer, I'm going to set the reciprocal on here of 075. So that green indicator there is for the line from Hope towards Princeton. I hope that makes sense. Having the airways charts in Avatab is really, really useful. ProLine 2, Amy, excellent. What's the MFD 85? Is that the device that goes down here where the GNS is fitted? I guess that gives you radar and map and that sort of thing. Yeah, exactly, Delray. It's been out for such a long time, and they're still. It's not only the fact they're still working on it, but they're actively updating it because people are buying it. Goran, one of the developers, once said that, you know, the thing is still selling, lots of people are still buying it, so he wanted to make it to the best standard he could with the release of the software as it is. So when X-Plane changed to a new turboprop model, it had some issues, and lots of other devs would just have walked away and said, look, give us another $50 for the new version sometime in the next month. Whereas this has been a constantly updated aircraft. Okay, you can show TCAS and checklists on the other screen. When it first released, it didn't have the GNS. The GNS only came out, I think, halfway through the X-Plane 10 cycle. I think they were looking at the pictures of them, Captain Crash. I think they were fairly common. So you can see the NDB pointer has just woken up. It's showing me that Hope is directly ahead. Now I could fly on the NDB pointer, the ADF pointer, but to be honest, it's easier just to leave it tracking the VOR. I'm not looking for precision really in this. I just want to get where I'm going and have fun doing it. If you're tracking outbound from a VOR and inbound to another VOR, some of the charts have got positions marked to change over from one to the other. You can see like sometimes a little a kind of broken line, like almost like a Z-shaped line across the airway. and that's the transition point from one VOR to the other. But without it published, you can do what you really need to do here. I was looking today at Beech 1900s as well, because I was flying the Pasco aircraft. Obviously I had a look at the rest of the Pasco fleet, and I'm just going to turn the noise. Actually, the noise is probably okay inside. Let me just back out a little bit. Pasco fly the Beech 1900 as well, and there isn't a super detailed Beech 1900 for X-Plane, unfortunately. I was looking to see whether or not the 1900 ever was fitted with a Proline 21 Advanced, but maybe not. Maybe there was experiments, but nobody actually seemed to buy that upgrade. You know, just for reasons. Excellent. We're climbing away quite nicely, and the pressurization is keeping up. It's a fairly straightforward pressurization system on this aircraft. You don't really need to worry about it as long as you set the landing field elevation. Thanks for joining Conquistador Array. The video will be on video on demand later, and as I said, this is basically the precursor to a full tutorial series for the Saab. We'll be doing basically the same sort of flying in the video series. Pilsnerish nails it. Reasons. Why would I be looking at aircraft that were fitted with a Proline 21 Advanced? I can't think of any good reason to be doing that. I don't remember seeing them either, Ross, though. They're definitely on the FA chart, you're right. So one of the other annoyances with tracking inbound towards an NDB just occurs to me. Actually, I'm going eastbound, so I should probably stop at 19 rather than 20, just for giggles. There we go. So an NDB, we don't have a distance from an NDB. We could cheat and use the moving map that we would almost certainly be flying with ForeFlight on our iPad anyway, but if you want to do it properly, we can read the distances off here. So I've got 25 miles. That 25 miles is from Vancouver towards Ferry. From Ferry there's another 20 miles, that takes up to 45 miles to Harras. And then from Harras there's another 25. That takes us up to 70, I think. But notice there's 25, 25, 25. It's very confusing marking there. It's only from Harras, it doesn't count Kekpo there. So 25, 25, 25 is effectively the same 25. So we got 25 and 25 makes 50 and 20 70. It should be 70 miles when we get to the Hope NDB. Just to keep us on our toes. And when we fly the descent into Kelowna, there's more of that sort of stuff coming up. Everybody uses ForeFlight, Pilsnerish. Why would you not use ForeFlight? If you had an option to equip an aircraft with a 10-inch multifunction display that you could update wirelessly and you know, allocate one per pilot to keep everything up to date, why would you not use that? Certification reasons. As long as you've got a proper IFR navigator on board, like the GTN or the GMS, you'll be fine. It's really pretty scenery, isn't it, Captain Crash? This is just basic scenery, and I like flying in the mountains in X-Plane because the mountain textures that come with X-Planes look pretty good. You know, it's only really when you're out over the flat plains that X-Plane starts to look a bit samey. In the mountains, I think it looks great. So just leveling at 190. Have a look at the fuel flow. Our fuel flow is about 200 kilograms an hour per side, and we've got 6.5. So we've got 1 hour, 2 hours, just about 3 hours of this fuel flow. Plenty of gas. It's come up with a little speed here as well, the 179. That's your long range cruise speed. It'll always give you a pointer for the long range cruise speed when it's in alt capture. I might be able to nudge the power up a little bit, maybe 715. It's got to be careful with the engine RPM here, and she'll keep accelerating. So we've got another 35 miles to go until the NDB. Let's have a look at the approach we're going to fly. So we're going to fly into Kelowna, and there's only one chart I really need for this, and it is the approach chart for the ILS Yankee runway 16. And this is where it's going to get a little bit interesting. We're going to fly outbound from the Princeton VOR. We're going to fly outbound on track 014 for 57.5 miles. We're then going to fly a DME arc. The DME source is coming from the ILS, so that's one bit of interest for us. And the centre of the arc is basically the Rutland NDB 374. We can probably tune 374 standing by just now because we're not doing anything else with that side. 374. I'll put it on both sides just to keep everything sensible. Remember, don't split things across the cockpit unless you really need to. 374. We are going to descend down on a step down fix down to 7963 and then turn inbound onto the 159 inbound. There's another NDB for the missed approach, which is the West Bank 389. And we'll be able to set that up in a little bit as well. We need to set the pressurization system. So our airfield elevation is 1420 feet. We'll come down here. We'll just set it on the altitude scale 14. And because I'm flying standard weather, I don't need to worry about the baro setting. But if you know the airfield baro setting, you set that as well. How are we doing? 44 miles. So I need to think about the descent as well. You see we've got a minimum altitude on this leg of 10.5. Okay, so to get down from 19 down to 10, that's 9,000 feet lost, 9, 18, 27 miles is required. I need 27 miles to lose the altitude. It's 57 miles on this leg here. So if I descend 20 miles after Princeton, that should get me down to 10.5 by the time we get to, sorry, 1 second. By the time we get down to 10.5 at TOSAs, it should all be working out. It seems we've got quite a few spam activities in the chat this evening. Just give me 1 second. That's back to normal. Just let me know in the chat if you see anything that's not ideal in there, shall we say. So where were we? We're talking about managing the descent. If I get down to 10,500 feet there, that's another 9,000 feet to the airfield, so I'd need 27 miles. Now the arc is at 17 miles and there's about 9 miles across there. So yeah, it's just about doable. I'm going to need to really use a higher rate of descent between TOSAs and Whitman here to make it all work out. But it should work out. I'll try and get the speed back to around about 200 knots, maybe even 180 knots at TOSAs. That should hopefully do it. So not a tutorial stream this evening, we'll just fly it, we'll have a look at it. And as I said, there'll be a tutorial series coming a little bit later for the aircraft. But if you've got any questions about VOR nav, by all means ask away. Looking at the speeds, I've burned off 250 kilos. I started at 12.3, so that's me down to about 12 tons just now. So if I load up my 12-ton card, you can see my reference speed for flap 20 is 119. So I'll just put that on the speed bug just now. The Saab doesn't really need the flaps to fly. It can fly at 160 knots without the flaps. We're going to use the flaps for drag more than anything else. For the approach, flap 7 isn't really relevant. We're going to go straight to flap 15 at 170 knots and then flap 20 at between 160 and 150 knots. And maybe in 13 miles time we'll be able to turn overhead the Hotel Echo. You see the NDBs off to the right hand side and the VORs on the left. The course shows slightly to the left. I look at the maps, just to use the 4-flight style cheat here, it is deviating ever so slightly. So it might be a good point now to go into heading mode, and I'll simply follow the NDB inbound. That gives me the opportunity, certainly on the number 2 radio here, to change over to have a look at Princeton inbound. I'll change the course on this one as well, but I'll keep the DME up because I know it's 70. It should kind of work out. This gear handle here, yeah, the modelling on the aircraft is superb, the texturing's superb, and it's only really been lightly worked over. You know, it's fairly solid still. So what I don't want to do is make rapid corrections as we go inbound to the NDB. I'm really just looking to establish outbound on the correct track. That's my only goal. You know, you don't want to upset the passengers by weaving around trying to fly it to very specific tolerances. Just get roughly overhead the NDB and then turn on course. It's difficult to get it right because you know that after, you know, when was this aircraft built? Probably the mid-1980s. That's going to have a lot of sunlight on it, a lot of grubby hands on it. It won't be perfectly transparent, but it looks good on this aircraft. Beautiful British Columbia. What sort of other aircraft are you looking forward to this year? I think I mentioned in the stream last time about my wish list for the aircraft coming up, but let me know in the chat what you're looking forward to. Some few high profile releases coming up. Oh, don't worry, NDBs, Roslow, NDBs are just witchcraft anyway. Just point the thing in the right direction, don't weave around too much, and as long as you're roughly in the ballpark you'll be fine. Jay Gregory, thanks very much for joining the stream. Pleasure to have you here. Hope you're enjoying seeing the fruits of your labour on screen. We're having a lot of fun with it. We're flying from Victoria up to Kelowna. The GPS is switched firmly off. We're about to turn over the Hope NDB here. You see the NDB swinging down the left hand side of the aircraft. So I'll change my nav aids so it's pointing inbound to Princeton. Turn the heading bug, second course goes off again, and hopefully the blue needle should just be about aligned. Click into nav mode and that saves me having to track the NDB outbound. Dead straightforward. And now I've got 2 DMEs counting down, which is exactly where I want to be. So remember, the spirit of radio navigation is not to have anything on the aircraft that you're finished with. Always try and stay ahead of the aircraft. So I've got Princeton tuned on the VOR now. I certainly don't need Vancouver. The next VHF station I need is the ILS, which is 111.3. 111.3. And I'll get it ready on both sides. 111.3. On the same subject, the second course, the course outbound from Princeton, is 014. So on the FO's side, just as a reminder, I'll set 014. We need Rutland 374. That is the first Echo X-ray, yeah, that's Rutland's defining the step down fixes. So I'll bring 374 up, and the bottom frequencies will be for the west bank, 389 for the missed approach. We'll just set those as well so we can flick over if we need it. 389. Excellent. And the missed approach itself is ahead on the runway track, climbing to intercept 226 to west bank, climbing left 213 towards YDC, 9,000 feet. So we've got everything we need for the missed approach as well. Challenger, Pilsner, Q400, 742. Yeah, that's a good list. I'm quite keen to see the Falcon as well. The Falcon, I'm really interested to see what the partnership with Dassault has yielded for that. But yeah, definitely the 742 is something I've been waiting for a long time. NDBs are magic, Toto Rico. You can basically put a small radio station up and track inbound to them. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that the instrument on the aircraft will navigate towards thunderstorms or send you in weird arcs if you're near the coast. These things don't matter. It's a lot cheaper. But yeah, there'll be a lot of instrument rating students very happy when the last NDB goes out of service, I'll tell you that. Trying to fly a hold on a VOR, on an NDB, sorry, when you've got NDB dip, ADF dip, it's problematic. Radiation in a different form. Exactly right, Pilsner. Jim, have you had fun working on the Saab again? We were talking about how long it's been since the aircraft was first released. Has it been enjoyable seeing the old thing again, making it getting up to the current standard? Holding on an NDB should be illegal. It can be satisfying. I would say holding on an NDB in IMC conditions is not something really you should be doing if you've got any choice, but it can be satisfying. .26 miles to go. Let's have a look at the cheaty map again, make sure that everything is how we expect it to be. There we go. And if you're learning VOR navigation, by all means use the AVATAB map, use the little red symbol for the aircraft and make sure it's doing what you're expecting it to do, because it's much easier to learn if you can say at this point here, actually I've done something wrong, what have I done wrong, and then you can learn from it. Oh, that's good to hear, Jim. Well, you've been enjoying it. It's, I said earlier on in the stream, it's a friendly and satisfying little aircraft to fly. It's friendly because I find it quite accessible. You know, it's not a difficult aircraft to pick up and put down, and it's satisfying because on the takeoff, especially, the workload can be a little bit on the high side. So when everything kind of works out, it's great. Oh, that's only a little bit, Russell, that's not too bad. The NVU navigator, it still seems a bit like magic. INSs are signs, but the NVU is magic. Hey Airfighter, good to see you. Twice a year in the simulator, yeah, tell me about it. I don't have to do that anymore, thankfully. It's all PBN now, I can do RNAV procedures rather than NDB. But I do play with it in X-Plane just to make sure I still could do it if necessary. It's satisfying, Russell, isn't it? It's enjoyable when it all works out. So ground speed here is only 244 knots. Nil wind up here, and it's basically running at the engine limit, so that's fine. Just as a reminder, when we get to Princeton, we're not on this chart anymore, we'll be on the approach chart. And it's track 014 outbound, which is this little green arrow here. And I'm only using the FO's green arrow as a reminder so that I don't have to remember the numbers every time. And then we've got the joy of dealing with step-down fixes that are defined by radials. So that may be a bit exciting. We may end up doing a rather steep descent onto the glide slope. We'll see how it all works out. the great thing about this aircraft as well is that it feels very immersive. I think I talked about it in the A300 stream, that there was a few things on that are immersion braking. This aircraft, it really has quite the opposite effect, that you do a couple of sectors in this aircraft and you feel like you've actually done some useful work with it, whereas the A300, it does feel like playing a game to a certain extent. I don't know why that is. I think it breaks the immersion for me, whereas this captures the immersion. We'll be doing a lot of NDB holds with the DC-3, I hope though. Can't wait for that DC-3. It's going to be a good one. How does it look outside? A few more hills around. Not the sort of place you'd want to get lost in a single engine aircraft, eh? Not with the clouds lowering below the peaks. $10 miles to go to the turn, so just double check that my heading bug is aligned. Just the heading bug in here, and you see using the keystrokes means you can operate it heads up. Canadian IFR following roads. You can also do it on the heading knob down here if you want it to be like the manipulators. You can use the manipulators there. I've got bindings for heading and pitch because I like to fly those heads up. Roads, rivers, ridges, whatever. Yeah, that sounds sounds familiar. Yeah, it certainly will be Airfighter, especially at the low airspeeds the DC-3 can fly. You put a little bit of upper wind in there, and holding in a DC-3 type aircraft can be quite interesting. Things like 3 times the drift outbound and correcting inbound, all that old stuff. It's what makes it satisfying. It's as much an art as a science, I like to say. So once you've done it, once you've got it, once you've grasped the concept, it feels like you've actually got a proper skill there. So there's me in heading mode. With it in heading, I'm going to continue tracking in on the white needle here. I'm going to swing the heading pointer, or the course pointer, I should say, round onto 014. I'll take off the second course, and we are 3 and a bit miles high, so we're just about to pass overhead. We should be just about to pass overhead. I'll start the turn, and I'll just maybe split the difference, and we'll watch for the VOR needle swinging down the right hand side of the aircraft. And remember, we're starting the descent 20 miles outbound down to 10,500. There's the needle gone behind. I'll put it back into nav mode. We get VOR in white, and it should capture outbound. So just waiting for it to capture back into VOR mode, and then we'll realign the heading bug. And we can fix some more nav aids. There we go. Here's VOR. So I'll move the heading pointer around. And with that we should be good. So other things we can do now. We're tracking outbound towards Tosas. I've got those step downs. See the step downs at Avtim? They're defined by these crossing radials on the Echo X-ray. That's 374 for Rutland. We've got 374 on here. The ILS 111.3, it also is used for the DME for the ARC. So I'm going to make sure that's tuned on the number 2 system at the moment. I'm also going to set his inbound course to 159. Again, this is where having those little pop-ups in the top left-hand corner really help. 159. I can set it on the standby here as well. So we'll swing that around to 159 as well. That reads off the number 1 system, so it's currently showing the same as this, but we want to have that aligned because at the moment on 1.61 this is where the glide slope is. Okay, I'm going to move this map around because I want you to be able to see where we are as well. So I'm going to bring that up here so that you can just about see it. Other things I need to do to prepare for the descent, I need to have my CTOT value for the missed approach in mind. So my field elevation is about 1500, I'll use the 2000 value, and my CTOT is 103. Let's set 103 for there. I'll leave it switched off. Just cross check, or double check that the landing elevation is set correctly. And if I can get the eye point there, double check the hydraulic pressure as well. It automatically increases the pressure if it drops below a threshold. And you've also got a fantastic checklist on the Saab. If I can find it, you've got a virtual checklist that will take you through and show you everything you need to do to fly it. So it's very accessible in that respect. So I'm going to make maximum use of the automation. It's just easier to fly the aircraft with the automation on this sort of procedure. And hopefully we'll have some nice views as we descend into Kelowna. You see I've got a DME now from the ILS, so 17.5 is what I'm going to descend down, arc round on. So that will count down as we, as we come up past it here, it will count down, and then maybe start to increase again. So I'm looking for 57 from Princeton and 17.5. What will probably happen is at 50 odd miles out I'll be off track left or right. Either way we'll just pick up the 17.5 radial and track it round. This is the Yankee procedure, Pilsner. Yankee is based on the old radio aid stuff, so it's easy to, it's not easy, it's more accessible to do it without the GPS. There's 16 miles out, so ask air traffic, get cleared down. In fact, it might not even be a radar service around here, it might be procedural, I don't really know. But there's 10.5, and at 20 miles we'll start the descent. As I said, if we've got time in the stream, we'll fly back to Victoria, and we'll do that using the GPS as well. And that, if you're getting a little bit cold feet about the radio navigation, you can see how the GPS works with the aircraft, because it works really well as well. And I don't think anybody would be flying this aircraft today without GPS equipment fitted. There's vertical speed, and I'm going to use my key binding. I'm just going to lower the nose. And look, I'm doing what, 250, it'll be about 300 knots we accelerate to. So I'm simply going to set 1500 feet per minute in the descent. I'll make a slight power reduction to about 60% torque. And at this point I'll put the seatbelt signs on because I usually forget about them. The other thing we can do is turn off the prop friction and turn off the prop sink. Thanks to Rico. Good luck with the rest of the coding. Thanks for popping in on stream. Much appreciated. And down we go. We may have to go through this cloud, we may not. So let's just get the anti-ice on prop and the engine on. And now it's really just a case of monitoring your descent using the 3x table. So we've got 7,000 feet to lose, that's 21 miles needed. That's going to take us up to about 47, and we got 57, so all was good. Do you know what? I've descended a little bit early, haven't I? It was 30 miles, not 20 miles. Let's just bite the VS off a little bit. No dramas. Remix reviews, yeah, thanks very much for joining the stream. it's fun and satisfying. It's a lovely aircraft to fly. It's really enjoyable. And I find flying it on the radio aids just gives that little bit of extra challenge. But you can fly it with the GPS, as I said. 6,000 feet to lose, 612, 18 miles. That would take us up to 50 miles. We've got 57, all is good. One of the good things about learning how to do radio navigation flying is that once you've done it for one aircraft, you can do it for pretty much any aircraft. The real games, this is the leading edge simulation Saab 340A. It was updated, major update about 2 weeks ago. Hey Chuba Flight, yeah, no worries at all. Where are you flying your citation to this evening? Oh, awesome. So 5,000 feet to lose, that's 15 miles on top of 33. That takes us roughly where we need to be. So it's just coming in on the map there. Kelowna should be down there somewhere. Actually, we've still got 20 miles to go. Let's just bite the S off. $4,000 feet to go. 12 miles. Oh yeah, plenty of space. Albuquerque, Burbank to Albuquerque, awesome stuff. Pilsner should be looking for his discount code sooner rather than later. If you've not seen the Saab, it's well worth having a look at it. It's fantastic. It would be nice to have better scenery, Pilsner's for sure. But you know, I like X-Plane how it looks. As I said, in the mountains, I think it looks really good. Sometimes it's easier in the US, isn't it? The maps in the US are much more accessible, shall we say. So at this point we should be level with about 5 or 6 miles to go towards Tosis. We'll be able to swap the navigation system over, set the next step down to 7963, and then the final step down is to 55. Hopefully that'll all work out. And again, you may see a slight difference between the geo-referencing on the charts and what we have on the instruments. So we just fly what we've got on the instruments and make the best of it. The step downs start at radial 49. From 49 we go down to 63, and then we can turn inbound and go down to 55. I think we're probably finished with the anti-ice, so props go off, engine goes off. And the other thing on the Saab is we don't make the approach and landing with the HP bleeds on unless we need them. The HP bleeds provide the de-icing for the leading edges more than anything else. If we don't need that, we can switch the HP bleeds off. If you leave the HP bleeds on, I'm led to believe it makes it fairly hot in the cabin when you shut down. So just about 7 miles to go. We're about 50 miles there. Only got 1,000 feet to lose. That's going to work out. So I can make a power reduction and start slowing back to about 180 knots. You can fly it faster, I just want to give myself time to get everything sorted out. There's 1,000 feet to go. So for the last 5 miles, I'm going to work on the basis my tracking to the VOR has been fine. I'm going to put it into heading mode. I'm going to change over to the ILS. I'm going to set the inbound course of 159. And now what I'm looking for is this DME arc coming up here, the 17.5. Okay, so it's only got a mile to count out. As soon as that hits 17.5, I'm going to turn right and intercept the arc and basically fly around the arc. And I'm only going to put the heading pointer at 90 degrees to this bearing pointer here. Okay, I hope that makes sense when we actually fly it. So power's coming off. It captures alt at 10.5. Once it's captured, I'll set 7.9 for the next descent. Looking at 17.4, 17.5, and we turn and we descend. And this is where the keyboard bindings really help. So I need about 1,500 feet per minute to get this done now. Changed my view accidentally. That's not what I wanted to do. Let's get that fixed. There we go. So I'm a little bit wide, keep coming down, and I'm looking for the tail of the needle to sweep through the 149, or the head of the needle here, sorry, to sweep through 149, and that's my next step down. Bring up these torque gauges as well. Should be hiding under there. Excellent. Point the nose in a little bit. So just closing the distance now. 17.7. Just coming up to the 149, so the next altitude is 6.3. 6.3 is selected, and then the next is at 152, and at 152, maybe 155, we'll start the turn in. Okay, we're 17 miles out and about 7,000 feet above the field, so we're still a touch on the high side. Shouldn't be a problem in the Saab though. So there's 152, we can go down to 55. We're on 17.5 miles out, and as the magenta and the blue starts to come together, that's a reasonable point to start the turn to intercept the ILS. I wish I hadn't moved my view accidentally, that's better. Excellent, so we can see with the glide slope now, we're slightly under the glide slope. I'll put it into nav modes. Actually, I'll put it into approach mode. There's lock and GS. Back the VS off, it's captured the localizer, and as the nose comes up, we should come back to 180 knots and capture the glide slope. Should all work out nicely from now. You can see the advantage of having the speed back a little bit flying the arc. It can get a bit untidy sometimes, but you just make the best of it. I'm just going to keep it 180 knots. There, it's captured the glide slope. So just as a reminder, this release version, there isn't a glide slope here, but there is down here, and that's already been fixed for the next release, which should be coming soon. 9,000 feet is set for the missed approach, and 180 knots will maintain down to around about 6 miles. So although it's a bit more challenging to fly the approach using the radio aids, the result is we've got a runway ahead of us having captured the glide slope without using the GPS at all. And, you know, you could make your life a lot easier using the GPS. or you could have some sim fun and fly it manually. And I prefer the difficult option. On the approach, I'll flick the auto coursant on. We've already got the bleeds off, we've got the landing lights to come on, and the seatbelts are already on. We should be good. Hey the Matium, just in time for the approach, just in time for the shocking landing that's going to happen. I ended up holding down the control button when I was moving my views around, and the result is it's not where it needs to be. So I'm just going to spend a second or so trying to put that back where I like it. That was my excuse for a rubbish landing. I think I can just about see the thing that I need to see. There we go. Excellent. Back where we need to be. And this is one of the strengths of the Saab, is we're flying this clean, no flap, no gear, 180 odd knots. Very scenic, huh? It would look even better if I generated ortho. I think it's a stunning looking little airplane. I really enjoy I love the profile views of it. It's just a very, not delicate, just very nicely engineered looking machine. Excellent. Well, do you know what? That's 7 miles. Let's put the gear down. And as I said, once we're at 170, we'll take the first 2 stages of flap. And then at 160 we'll take the next stage of flap. It will slow down very nicely with the gear now. There's 170, 2 stages of flap. I'll bring the props up to maximum. (160), final stage of flap, so flap 20 for the landing. I'll start increasing the power because it's going to bleed the speed off quite a bit. And I'll just look to hold about 140 initially. That's only plus 20. And then we'll start to let it decay once we get below 1,000 feet. So you see I've got, for 140 knots, I've got around about 35% torque. If I bring that torque back to about 25%, it will gradually slow down to the VAP speed. It slows down, yeah, 1.61's a lot better, raw slow, it's really nice. So we've got gear down, 3 greens, flaps to landing, CTOT is ready to go, we've got auto coursant on, and we've got HP bleeds off, we're good to go. Let's start to make that power reduction, so I'll come back to about 25% torque. Take the autopilot out. And I'll just pitch and follow the flight directors. So this is where not having the glide slope on the PFD can be a little bit more interesting. You've got more work to do on your scan. The flight directors can help you out, but you need to keep that glide slope in the scan as well, because they're older style flight directors. They're not like airliner flight directors, which are super responsive. You've got to stay on top of the glide slope scale, the glide slope indication, and the flight directors. But happily you've got a speed reference in there as well. You see the speed reference on the left hand side of the HSI? And if I concentrate on flying rather than talking for the next little bit, we may get a landing out of this. There's 25% torque. Speed's coming back towards the VRAF. Picture looks good. Aircraft's roughly in trim, maybe a touch nosy. And when we get to about 50 feet or so, we want to start gradually bringing the power back. We don't want to snap that power back. If you snap the power back, you'll have an abrupt touchdown. There we go, 50 feet. Easing it into the flare, looking at the far end of the runway. Sits down, into reverse. Smoothly all the way back into reverse. And it will decelerate nicely without even touching the brakes. I'll come back to ground idle. And that's us down. It's a really enjoyable aircraft to fly. I have a lot of fun with this Saab, simply because it keeps your instrument scan on your toes, it keeps your radio flying skills sharp. Here's the exit here we want. Just a little touch on those toe brakes. I'll take the tax lights off, tax lights on, landing lights off, strobes off. Start bringing the flaps in. And off we go. Flaps in so gust lock can go on. And we'll turn round to the right here. There's Alitalia out here in British Columbia. Nice to see. Turn the CTOT knob all the way down and the radar can go off. Last thing we've got to do is that auto coursing goes off, and when I get a chance we'll switch off the windscreen heat and the probe heats as well. I'm just going to park on the last stand here. Right, let's get the rest of it as we're shut down. So I'll turn off the taxi lights for the ground crew, and I'll just pop into external view to aid with the parking. Round we go. So no marshalling facility in X-Plane at the moment. The external view is the solution for that. It looks really nice, doesn't it, Captain Crash? It's just very nicely modelled, and the systems are great on it as well. So just remind myself that I don't have the same brakes as we normally have. We also have things clipping through. That'll do us. So I'm going to set the parking brake here. I'm going to make sure we're set to ground idle. Having done that, we need to start shutting it down. So first of all, I'll put the transponder to off. I'll put the emergency lights to off. Having done that, avionics can go off. It was these switches up here I needed to do on the taxi in. Avionics off, a generator can go off on both sides. And with that, we'll bring the levers back to minimum for a little bit. Into the feather range. And then off we go. You always shut these props down from the feather position. These are the Doughty propellers, I believe. If it's the Hamilton standards, according to the manual, you don't need to do that, but that might be a B model thing. Excellent. Now it's shut down. We've got the ESS avionics on. We've got all the generators off. I'll put the seatbelt signs off. Check the props. Basically stopped on both sides. Put the beacon off. Cancel the noise. And we'll go and help Duncan out, letting everybody out. So unlock, unlock, push. And again, just listen to the sounds on these stairs here. Duncan's going to look out the window and make sure the propeller has stopped. He's going to undo the door, unlatch and push. His seat's out the way, so he's going to slide the steps out. Listen to the noise. Doesn't it sound good? That's us. Nice arrival into Kelowna. Stream's been going for about 1 hour and 40 minutes, 1 hour 35 minutes. Our flight schedule for Kelowna, as Pascal 1531, was 9:05, so we're a few minutes behind schedule. Partly because we flew the long way around, the westerly departure and the southerly arrival. Partly because we didn't fly VFR direct. But also, it's a Beech 1900 schedule, so the Saab's just that little bit slower in the climb. Whilst I'm having a think about what we're going to do next, does anybody have any questions so far? Any questions on the approach? Anything else you want to ask while it's fresh in your mind? I'm going to do the next start as a battery start. So to allow us to do that, I'm going to switch everything off just now. ESS avionics. I'm going to make sure that the no smoking signs are switched off, and then we'll turn everything off on the batteries. That's the aircraft basically powered down now. Oh, it's the recircs. I should have done those as well. So if I bring up this chart here and this one here, can we zoom out far enough to see it? There we go. So there's what it actually looked like. And here was what it was supposed to look like. Just as a reminder, what we did, we kind of squared it off a little bit there. It's only a very shallow leg of a DME approach, and this is really the inevitable consequence of me messing around with X-plane views when I should be flying the aircraft. But as a reminder, in the last 5 miles on the run in towards Tosis here, we changed our DME source from Princeton, which was miles behind us, to the DME itself from the ILS. That means that, if you can imagine, I can't draw on here, unfortunately, but if I was slightly out to the west here, I would still pick up that 17.5 arc and fly it round. Likewise, if I drifted to the east, I would still pick up the 17.5 and fly it round. That makes it fairly straightforward. The step downs, it was the crossing radial, so we're looking at the head of the needle, the magenta needle, for the NDB. And getting the speed back to around about 200 knots there means we can increase the rate of descent to get the extra height off. So the next approach, or the next flight, will be basically GPS, and we'll fly. It won't be the full arrival into Victoria. We'll do it a little bit quicker than that to save some time on the stream. But I just want to make sure you've seen it flying with the GPS as well. And I also want to make sure you've seen a battery start with the aircraft. Excellent. Beautiful British Columbia. Let's go and look around, see what we can see on the default scenery while we're here. Looking out for good opportunities to fly de Havilland Beavers. And I really wish, does anybody know if the RW Designs Twin Otter, does that have floats included with it? Or is it just a straight Otter? Because I think if it had floats, Harbour Air would also be great fun to fly around BC, around the harbour there. 727, ATR. It's only really that, well, was it Air Berlin? There may be a little bit out of place. Air Berlin, Lufthansa, is that Lufthansa? Yep, and Alitalia. Delta's okay. Not bad. It does have floats, so that would be good. Oh yeah, I'm not going to use the GPU. It's just another interesting factor on the Saab. Without having a GPU, you've got preserve the batteries. What I don't know, and maybe Jim would be able to tell us if Jim's still there, is whether or not there's a hot bus on the aircraft. Because this panel here is functional. You can turn on the window lights, the overhead lights, reading lights, for example, and emergency lights. But I don't really know if I don't think they work unless you've got at least one of the batteries switched on. Control CYYJ, thanks very much for the follow. I fly the 320 series, so 319, 320, 321, old engines and new engines. A few other follows as well. The Real Games for You 19, thanks for the follow. Remix Reviews, awesome. And Avitech 320, thanks for joining as well. There's a hot bus. Okay, so things like the cabin lights, Jim, I wouldn't have to have the battery supply on for the cabin lights to work. They would still be functional here. These things here, for example. How much quieter is the Neo to fly? The main difference in the flight deck Control CYYJ is really the age of the aircraft rather than the engines. The Neo engines do sound different. They're a bit more bassy than the CFMs and the IEs. But really with a newer aircraft it's just a little bit quieter because everything fits a bit better. It's not that worn old aircraft feel, so they can be a bit quieter. And Mick Ham, thanks very much for the follow as well. So let's have a look at the charts on how to get out of Kelowna here. So we finished with the ILS approach, and we're going to do, as I said, we're going to do the GPS business here. So there's Victoria, that's the departure at Victoria. What I need is a departure chart. Kelowna 8, I think it is, that should be the West Bank. It's basically the same as what we looked at for the missed approach. From West Bank, I'm just going to fly direct to Vancouver, YVR. It keeps it straightforward, but we'll be able to see the aircraft fly, the departure. Fuel, we should probably load a little bit extra fuel on board. Let's have a look and see what we've got. Actually, you know, we've got a ton of fuel. That's going to be enough to get us back to Victoria and divert to Vancouver if necessary. So if I'd been paying a bit more attention, yeah, it's just under 12 tons. So the 12-ton card that I've got here is perfect. You hear engine noise, go and try and find a Neo for your next flight. The Neos are quieter in the cabin, certainly. The one issue you'll have with a Neo compared to an older aircraft is that they carry more seats as well. The airlines didn't want to go to all the bother of buying new aircraft with new engines without fitting more seats as well. So sometimes the cabins can be a bit less comfortable, maybe not the same size seats, or maybe a little bit shorter leg pitch. But no issues on the Saab with our lovely 34 seats back here. Don't fly a 154 or an MD-80, they're noisy. Right. So in this state here, we've got no external power. We've only got the batteries. Okay? So we can connect up the batteries. I can put on the ESS supply. But if I switch on the avionics, there's nothing. You can't get the avionics to life. Okay? So what we have to do is start one of the engines. It's really, there's no way around that. On the B model aircraft, they've got something called a propeller brake, and ATRs have this as well. That because it's a free turbine engine, the core of the engine can turn, but the propeller has a brake applied to it. So the engine's running, but the propeller isn't turning. That means the auxiliaries, like the generator, are driven, and you can use the engine as an APU. Now, it's not the most fuel efficient way of doing it, but we only burned about 400 kilos for our hour's flight, and an Airbus A320 APU burns about 200 kilograms an hour anyway. So these engines at cruise power are burning just a little bit more than a 320 APU burns sitting on the gate. So it's not really the end of the world. The only thing is, it's a bit more dangerous because you've got the propeller turning on the ramp. You've just got to be careful about it. So let's get it all closed up, and we'll get ready to go. I'm going to close the doors, listen to the sounds again. Put them away. Close the door. Latch the door. Secure the door. Close the seats. We'll let Duncan worry about the cabin lights. Not fussed about that this evening. We'll close the door. Oop, not quite. There we go. Close, lock, latch. And we're in the seat. So, we did a motoring start in the previous start attempt. That's where we put the ignition switches off, and we started with the condition levers in the fuel off position. Once the engine spun up, we moved the lever to start and put the ignition on. There's another way of starting, and that's doing the direct start, where we simply put the lever into the start detent, leave the ignition on, and it'll fire up straight away. Now, the operators of the Saab would always recommend that you do a motoring start, because it's better for the engine. You get cooler temperatures on the engine. Okay, but just to show you the difference, we'll do both of the starts. Thanks, Jim. I'll have a look at that. So let's get it fired up. We're going to start. It doesn't really matter at this moment, but because the doors are on the left-hand side, we're going to start the right-hand engine first of all. So I'm just going to double check my avionics are off. I'm going to check my HP valves are off, the recircs are off, autocoursing's off, and the battery temperature is reasonable for a start. So I'm going to put the seatbelts on, the no smoking signs on, and the beacon on. That's about all we can really do just now. To do the direct start, I'm going to leave the ignition set to normal. I'm going to move the number 2 lever into the start detent. If you have issues with this with a mouse manipulator, lift it up and over and then bring it back. You've got to make sure that it's in that detent there. okay, and it says start up here. With that, quick check around, we're 5 minutes before schedule, start. And you'll see that when it spins up, it'll fire up straight away. There we go, ignition's on. Excellent, thanks Jim, much appreciated. I'll use that for the tutorials, that's really useful. So here we are. So there's another oddity we've got to do on the Saab. Remember I said it doesn't have IRS, but we still have to align the gyros. Okay, so the first engine's running. I'm going to switch the generator to on. Just double check the generator here. It'll take a second or so to fire up. I need to leave it, I think it's a minute and 15 seconds before we start the other engine, because you can see it's fairly hot on the batteries here. But I am going to switch the avionics left and right on. Okay, by doing that, it lets me align the gyros whilst the aircraft's starting up. I'm also going to use the opportunity to turn on the GPS and load the departure. Without a GPU, this is really the only option you've got. You just use the engine as the APU or the GPU. So all I'm going to do is look at my flight plan. It is from Kelowna. I'm going to go to Victoria. You know the sounds with the GPS as well. There's custom sounds everywhere on this aircraft and it sounds awesome. As I said, it's a very, very immersive aircraft. CYYJ. Excellent, I'm going to load the procedure out of Kelowna. So it's the departure. It was the Kelowna 8, runway 16, load, and that should take us out to the west bank, vectors, and then we're good. We're going to go to YVR after the vector. And obviously if you were doing this sort of flying in this aircraft, you just save the routes and then you've got it, so you can just load it and you're good to go. YVR, there we go. I'll make sure it's in GPS mode and we get LRN1. So you can actually do that up here with the source selector, block 1 LRN1. Okay, so having done that, everything's all nicely aligned. The next thing we do is switch the avionics off again. They'll sustain for a certain period. We're going to bring the second engine up, click it to start, and off we go. So if you've only got mouse and keyboard and like a basic joystick, the direct start is easier, but the motoring start is more realistic for the aircraft. The one we did at the beginning is probably a little bit more realistic. Just waiting for it to finalize the start. There we go. We'll put the second generator online. The right hand generator is good. I just want to check the voltage on the second generator before I put those expensive avionics online. Yeah, that's fine. So they're both good. Check the emergency bus. We'll put the avionics. Nope, not that one. We'll put the avionics on. And on, emergency lights go to arm, bleeds are reset, recirc can come on now, bleeds are off, and auto coursing goes on. We'll leave the other switches until we've increased the prop RPM. All we got to do is finish off. We'll set the compass heading, which was 159 for the departure. We'll make sure that we've got the LRN selected. 9,000 feet is good for the departure altitude. I'll put it into IS hold, and I'm going to select my flaps to V2, flaps 15, which is 115 knots. And just to remind myself, flaps up at 126, en route 144. So there's 126 and 144. And with that, we are ready for our pushback. Hopefully
Hey,
he knows.
Captain, let me know where you want this thing.
There we go.
Great news, Captain. Your tow's coming.
Oh, he's always so enthusiastic, his tie, huh? Like it. Here he comes. I love seeing the better pushback tugs because they're the only vehicles that drive around with people in them. You see the belt loaders and stuff around the default airport scenery, and they're like just driving around with nobody on them. So I'm going to leave the props down at the start position just now. With them down at the start, I'm going to leave the ice protection and the standby pitot switches off, but everything else is set ready to go. Yeah, it's basically a straight line Pilsner. What we're going to do is fly down towards Vancouver and then we'll hang a left, fly out over the US airspace.
Alright, looks like the doors and hatches are closed and we're ready to connect.
Good news. Fly left over the US airspace and basically go on a 45-degree join for the ILS. So that'll make the flight a little bit quicker.
We got that winching strap and adapter hooked up. Go ahead and let go of the parking brake when you're ready for a push.
Let go of the parking brake. Well, I'm going to need to touch it first and then put it away and then you're good. Off we go. Alright. I can't remember what he says next. Well, we've got the engines running so we don't get the right fire them up message. Still. Bit of local enthusiasm.
Here comes the pushback.
Awesome. Here we go. I've probably said it a million times already. This is a model that was designed for X-Plane 9 and has been skillfully updated. We're going to have better pushback related excitement this evening. Just drive in a straight line. There we go. That's better. I probably hadn't parked quite as straight. Do you know what causes that? I've realised that when you define a pushback, it seems to be that pushback was already defined. It already knew what that pushback was because I've done this flight a few times, but I didn't stop in the same location exactly as I did the last time. So that little wiggle there is probably a result of it trying to get on the initial track back to where it was. So maybe it's better to always clear out the pushback and start again if you're not always exactly on the same location. Maybe. That'll be one for Toto. Maybe I'll ask him tomorrow.
Just about done here. Go ahead and set your parking brake.
Alright, parking brake set, clear disconnect.
And we're disconnecting the tow. Give me just a moment.
Sweet. He sounds like a pushback driver that still enjoys his job, so we'll give him that. Disconnect. Off he goes. .61 reintroduced the heat haze effects, I think, as well. So it's
and we're disconnected. Signal and pin on the right. Take it easy and have a safe flight.
Off he goes. I'm trying to work out what I did to my view on the arrival there. It's annoying me slightly. There we go. Right, he's on his way. I'm going to bring the power levers up, or the condition levers I should say, out to slowly to the unfeather position and then all the way up to max. He's there, show me his pin, that's good news. Once the props are up, the de-icing can go on, or the windshield heating, sorry, goes on. Standby pitot. Wait for those lights to go out. Anytime. Maybe they don't until we actually get moving. Can't remember. They should go out. Check it again in a second, and I'll put the transponder to out. You know what, it'll go out when we start moving, I'm sure. Right, there we go. Everything's done upstairs. Autocourson's on. HP blades are off. Recircum bleeds are on, and all we need is the taxi light. Clear left, clear right, steering's on, oxygen's on, and we've got the speeds in, brakes off. Off we go. Captain Crash, you need to speak to Sandpatch and do the voice. Sandpatch has got a voice pack that has got a number of different voices on there, shall we say. So, worth getting in touch with them. Right, we're going to go around to the left and depart off runway 16. I hope all this Saab action, Amy, isn't slowing down work on the UNS. We need you to finish the UNS. Right, on the taxi out, I'm going to double check that my CTOT knob is all the way off. I'm going to flick the switches. There's no power increase, it goes back to off, and I set my CTOT, which was 103 from the previous. With that, we'll take the gust lock out and do some flight control checks. There we go. My squeaky old joystick doing its thing. Motley collection of European aircraft here in Kelowna. Oh, those pesky theses always getting in the way. It's always something. Just thinking, if I put 389 to the top as well, that should give us West Bank, just in case we need it as a source of backup navigation. But the GPS should do it for us. So the one difference on this departure is on the previous departure there wasn't any terrain really to worry about, so I went straight from 144, the clean minimum manoeuvring speed for flap 0. I accelerated up to 160. In this case we'll hold it back at 144 because there's no icing, and that'll help us climb a little bit better. If there was icing, it would need to be 154, and you wouldn't bring the props back if you were in icing conditions. I'll show you something else as well. I'm not going to do packs off departure. However, if I put it into takeoff inhibit just now and then switch the packs off, maybe it doesn't do it in this version, it would sometimes give you that caution coming up there. There we go. The air conditioning caution. So you've got to be careful that when you do the takeoff inhibit there's nothing on there that you're not interested in. Alright, packs are back on. Check it's clear, takeoff inhibit. And all the inhibit does is it stops at making master cautions and master warnings, or stops at making master cautions certainly for stuff that really don't matter on the takeoff roll. And we don't need the full runway at Kelowna. As Pilsner said, the WestJet operate the 737-800 in here, so it's not a small airstrip. The Saab has no issues at all with it. Just hold here for a second, make sure I've done everything. So put the lights on, strobe lights on, taxi off, we can ping Duncan so that he knows, check the autocoursing, check the HP bleeds, and the de-icing gear temperatures are good. Let's go. So just a reminder, we're waiting for the beta lights to go off, the autocoursing to arm, and then we'll bring the CTOT in. We just want to check that everything works as expected on the takeoff roll. We'll do it on a rolling start. So beyond the flight idle gate, beta light's gone off, push it forward. Autocourson's armed, CTOT in, and we're looking for 103% torque. Up it comes. Yeah, it looks good. There's 80 knots checked. V1, rotate. Positive climb, gear up. And remember, we can use vertical sync, so 115 is V2 for an engine failure, but 125 or so, that's better. So V2 plus 10. Now 126, that'll do. So we're in heading just now. We'll ask our co-pilot to engage now. We've got LRN1. Follow the flight directors. Above 1,000 feet, lower the nose ever so slightly. We'll start accelerating. So above the flaps up speed, flaps can come up. I'm just continually pushing vertical sync until I get roughly to 144. Remember, at this point the co-pilot could be setting power, but we're just prioritizing what we're doing. And that should do us. Autopilot's in, climbing at 145. Check the navigation, we're looking to turn inbound on the 231. You can see the needle coming round here. I'll start working the CTOT off, keeping an eye on the torque coming down. And remember, always a good idea to be in IAS hold when it's doing this. There it's turning quite happily. So because you're in IAS hold, even as you bring the power off, the aircraft will lower the nose to maintain speed. And if I keep an eye on the torque gauges, I can nudge the power levers forward as the CTOT comes off. That's good, both switches off. Bring the power, let's do the autocoursing first, and then I'll bring the power back. The condition levers back, sorry. They'll come back to about 57 degrees. That should give me 1230 prop RPM. Just there. Excellent. On the overhead, if we needed the bleeds on, now we could do it. Put the HP bleeds on as well, and check we've got a differential pressure, and we're pressurizing. Prop sync, prop friction, prop sync. Off we go on the way back towards Victoria. Can you put the GTN 750 into this? That's a good question. I don't see why not. You could probably use it as a 2D pop-up, I believe, and it can drive the same X-plane data refs. But I don't have the GTN 750. It's not something that I've tried. So maybe somebody else in the chat knows about it, Superboy. Maintaining that 145. 144, 145. So I'm climbing into what could be an icing layer. I'm going to protect the aircraft by putting the prop ice protection and the engine ice protection on. But if I'm not actually making ice, if there's not ice forming on the aircraft, I don't need to worry about the icing speeds. If I had to, if we started picking up ice, I would need to bring the prop RPM back up, and I would need to target 154 or 160. Shouldn't be an issue today. And you see the GPS is navigating us more or less along the departure track. And if you're using these charts here, remember that the charts are only as good as the person that's drawn them. So if the aircraft symbol isn't right on the chart, don't worry about it, just trust the instruments and fly what the instruments say. Let's climb up further, and let's go, what are we doing, westbound? Try 70. No, I get that wrong, I always get that wrong. 18? 18. I go where air traffic tells me to go. I really enjoy it, Superboy. If you missed the start of the stream, I'm a real fan of this aircraft. because I love the manual nature of it. It's got very nicely detailed systems. It's got the flight dynamics are really nice. It's had very long-term developer support as well, so it's I think it's a very good proposition to buy. I really enjoy it, so I'd strongly recommend it. I would have no regrets at all with the Saab. I'm going to switch the lights off. I'm going to switch off the seatbelt sign so Duncan can do his business. And I was actually up there for the icing, that was what I was looking for. Props off, engines off, and above the terrain, so I'm simply going to click climb, and that's going to go into high-speed climb. So it'll fly level for a little bit and accelerate up to 180. If I didn't want that fly level, click it into climb and then straight over to VS, just let it accelerate at 1,000 feet a minute, and when it picks up the bug, put it back into climb mode again. That's a good way of remembering it, Rossalo. I simply look at the flight plan and do what it says, but I'm kind of lazy like that. Just nudge the torque forward a little bit. So now it's turning us onto the vector track, but hopefully at this point we'll be speaking to Vancouver and they'll say direct Vancouver because, well, it seems to be the only way to fly in this part of Canada, really. You just got P3D version 5 and got a refund. You can't go back to it after X-Plane 11, so you prefer X-Plane 11 to P3D, Superboy, yeah? I've never flown P3D. I've got thousands of hours probably on Flight Sim 2004. Flight Sim 10 came out, FSX came out, and a lot of the aircraft I enjoyed flying weren't compatible with it, so I kind of drifted away from it, started flying DCS instead, and came back to civilian sims for X-Plane 10, and I haven't looked back. It's interesting. I think X-Plane is a much better, much more enjoyable sim. I know better's subjective. The things that matter to me, the most important thing that matters to me with X-Plane is the people behind X-Plane are aviation people. Okay, they want to be in this business. Okay, they weren't contracted as software developers to simply go and build a flight simulator or build a theme park game or build a roller coaster game or build a zoo game. They were aviation people that wanted to build a flight simulator. Austin was a pilot. He was a trainee pilot when X-Plane was being developed, and this was his platform to learn how to help himself learn how to fly, and that persists in it. So that the flight dynamics have got an underlying realism to them, but also it's a very open platform, so it's very easy for developers to work with it. I work as an airline pilot. My previous career prior to airline flying was in the software business. I worked in technical support, infrastructure delivery, and software testing, and I'm not a coder. I can't write code to save my life. I can do some scripts and things like that, but I'm not a developer. But there's enough tools supplied with X-Plane out the box that I can make a copy of an aircraft I used to fly. Not a good 3D model, but a good flying model of an aircraft that I used to fly. And I can experiment by changing like the wing profile and see how it would fly if it had a different wing profile. And that's worth a lot to me. There's a lot of experimentation. And the thing about X-Plane is I remember Flight Sim 10, goodness, I remember messing around with the config files on X-Plane 10 to actually get it to work reliably. So the tinkering and the fiddling you do in X-Plane is to do with how airplanes fly. It's not about actually making your sim work properly. And that's, you know, it makes it worth it for me. I came back to X-Plane 10. Let me just zoom out a little bit and have a look at some of the scenery. I came back to X-Plane 10 to fly the IXEG 737. That was what got me back into X-Plane, or back into civilian sims. And the IXEG just reminded me of the 737 trainer that I'd spent a lot of hours in. It was that immersive. X-Plane just captures that. It just nails the feeling of flying so much better than the other sims. The scenery, yeah, you know, the scenery could be better in some places, the number of textures could be better, but you're looking at a 5-year-old sim and an 8-year-old aircraft here, and it's a very enjoyable flying experience, you know. It doesn't, there's nothing really immersion breaking on it. So I'm probably a bit of an X-Plane fanboy, probably. Just mute the microphone for a second. Excellent. So say we all. Very good. So I probably want to have a look at the approach chart because I said we're going to make this a little bit quicker. So we're going to go to Victoria. How would we do this in real life? That's a good question. Let's have a look and see what the arrivals are. Active pass rings a bell. Let's have a look at the arrivals. A-pass, there we go. Active pass would take us, so there's Hope. Yeah, and we're already going direct to YVR, so that's probably the same thing as Pilsner said, the active pass arrival. Straight down the airway that we flew. We've got some crossing altitudes. Overhead Vancouver at 130. Overhead active pass breaks off down to Obsop, or runway 27, which is inbound on 269. So let's see if we can make the GPS do that. So procedure. Here, select the arrival. Active pass via Hope, runway 27, and if I zoom out a little bit, yep, Obsop, there we go, load that. So YVR is here, and it's also here. If you ever find yourself in this situation in X-Plane, what I recommend, just stick it into heading before you start messing around with it. And then if you try and do direct to this, it doesn't always work because it's already got it. Okay, so just clear it out, and then you should be able to go direct to Vancouver. There we go. Check that we're still aligned, pop it back into nav. Just a tiny little workaround on here. We'll also load the approach. We're going to fly the ILS runway 27. Vectors. What does that get us? LAFO. Where's LAFO? I should probably close some charts. Don't need that one. Don't need that one. Don't need that one. LAFO, there we go. So direct to LAFO at some point will have us straight in onto Victoria. It's 109.95, so I'll just tune that up just now because I'm using the GPS for everything else. 109.195. If you were flying this for real, in this sort of aircraft fit, it would be a good idea to keep up to date with where the VORs are, simply because you only get a single GPS. However, you're above any terrain. If in doubt, just ask air traffic and they'll try and help you out. It's just easier than messing around being lost. So Stab, still all making sense to everybody? What we're talking about, the power lever stuff on takeoff, the CTOT, I hope that's all coming across as fairly straightforward. CTOT seems difficult to begin with, but really it's just a fuel trim. It's just giving you more, it's reducing the lost power on the departure. Yeah, and I'm really hoping Airfighter that X-Plane 12 has some visual tweaks in there as well. There's one other little gotcha while we're in here. The laminar 530, it doesn't always behave in the most predictable of manners. Okay, it does a very good job most of the time. But what I'm going to do is put it into heading mode just now. I'm going to change my source selector over to VOR, and I'm now going to set my inbound course. It should do that by itself. On a GA aircraft with an electronic HSI, the 530 should really do this by itself. I honestly don't know whether it does in this aircraft, because I always treat the 530 with an element of suspicion, shall we say. So I kind of make it do what I want it to do. There's LRN1, climb 162, and we're still going to YVR. What sort of list of things would you like to see, guys? What would you, or what would you like to see in X-Plane 12? What would be your top list of things you'd like to see? Superboy, I'm really looking forward to the Rotate MD-11 as well. If the MD-11 is to the same standard as the MD-80, it's going to be a nice aircraft to have. You've got the Tolis 321 XLR, which is long range-ish. You've got the A300, you've got the 747-200 coming out, and there's one I'm missing as well. There's another heavy I'm missing. Can't remember what it is now. Oh yeah, you said it, the 310 as well. How far away are we? At the moment, 154 miles. Schedule's in 35 minutes. Will we make that? Maybe. Maybe, we'll see. So whenever you're flying the Saab on Beach 1900 schedules, the Saab is a bit slower to climb. You climb at a lower airspeed and a lower vertical speed. So you do tend to lose time flying beach schedules on a Saab, but not too bad, over an hour. Improved ground texture, yep, absolutely, Amy, that'd be quite high up there. For the default scenery, just a little bit more variety in the textures. Nothing dramatic, but a little bit more variety. Transitions in the weather, yeah, absolutely, 100% with you there. The snap transitions are a bit tedious sometimes. For me, it's the runway and the terrain contouring. I've generated some ortho tiles, and that is hit or miss whether or not the terrain works. So the default terrain is generally more predictable, but you do have odd things like canyons halfway across the runway, which gets a bit frustrating. But part of that's probably down to the scenery layout as well, with the sceneries not having the boundaries defined. I'm just hoping for incremental improvements in X-Plane 12. So see, we're flying direct Vancouver is more or less the same as the active pass arrival. The big difference with the GPS is you can fly a straight line as opposed to these odd kinks here. Rusty85C, thanks so much for the follow, much appreciated. If you're interested, come and say hello in the chat as well. No pressure either way. So we've got a little bit of time in the cruise. If you've got any questions, anything else you want to see in the Saab, we're privileged to have Jim in the chat with us as well. So if there are any questions, I'm sure he'd be keen to answer them. I'm looking for the switch that I've forgotten to switch. There's always a switch I've forgotten to switch. Oh, okay. Austin has a weather-related video for X-Appian. That'd be good to see, Airfighter. I'll have a look from it. I'm just going to nudge my power forward a little bit. Usually about 715, 720 keeps the engine RPM around about 100%. But we should get, you see we're doing 181's the long-range cruise just now. Hopefully we'll get up to about 195. Marginal gains on short sectors. Beautiful BC. This is your favourite aircraft right now, Rusty? It's just super enjoyable. I've been flying this thing pretty much constantly. I've not been flying much else for the past couple of weeks. I've been doing some de Havilland Beaver flying and Saab flying. I do like it. What is it you like about it, Rusty? A bit bumpy over Death Valley to be flying. As long as the seatbelt signs are on and they've not had too much from the bar, you'll be alright. Lots of Logan flights, oh yeah. What's your favourite Logan Air destination? Do you do Logan Air flights with real weather turned on? You must be great at crosswind landings if you do real weather and fly out to Stornoway or Benbecula. That's what this aircraft's really all about though. The Jagged Shadows, Superboy, yeah, this might be graphics card related as well. So I've got a really old computer. I'm running on a i5 2500K from 2011. It's overclocked slightly, but it's still pretty old. And a GTX 1060 with 6 gigabytes, so it's an ancient computer in the grand scheme of things. Why do they have crazy layouts? So the thing about pretty much every airfield in the UK, every airfield in the UK was built during the war, the Second World War, so they all have a triangular layout. The Royal Air Force decided that a triangular layout gave you the best compromise, because with the angles between the runways you never have more than, typically more than what, 30 degrees of crosswind. So if you're flying a tailwheel, high performance tailwheel fighter or heavily loaded bomber, you don't have that same crosswind to worry about. But yeah, it's a bit weird. And some airports, they would always start off with those 3 runways. If you look at somewhere like Birmingham, EGBB, because of the housing developments around the airports, the longest possible runway for development post-war wasn't necessarily the into-wind runway. So you get Birmingham with 1533 that is always a crosswind. It's a good CPU, Superboy. I think it's probably time to retire it and get something a bit more modern. But yeah, it's still doing a good job. If you look at Heathrow Turboflight, Heathrow was basically it was 2 triangles intermeshed, almost like a Star of David. In fact, you've got the 2 westerly runways, you've got northwest southeast and northeast southwest, and up until the 1990s there was still a runway 23 at Heathrow, but the Terminal 2 developments removed that. But you can still see remnants of it. You can still see the taxiways that used to be runways and rapid exit taxiways, so they had runways in every direction. But the reality of being in the UK is that the northwest southeasterly runways are just hardly ever used, except Birmingham still has theirs. They're kind of an odd one out in that respect. 727 with Siva, yeah, it's good as well. It's really enjoyable. It's fast though. You got to keep on top of that. The great thing about the Saab is you're hootering along here at 250 knots. It's fairly relaxing, fairly chilled out, especially with the GPS doing the business. So Vancouver is about 77 miles to go. I can't remember if this shows the plan. So at the moment it's going to go down towards, let me bring up the other thing so you can see it. At the moment we are flying down towards Vancouver, turning left and then flying the whole active pass arrival. What I'm going to do is, in another few miles we'll just go direct, and we'll go direct down to the extended centre line, and that'll just shave a few minutes off the flight really. It's a long enough stream so far. But I really wanted to get a stream done with the Saab. the updated Saab, because it's what I've been doing for the past 2 weeks really. Pilsnerish is the man to speak to about detailed scenery. Pilsnerish has A, all the airplanes, and B, all the scenery. So if you're interested in X-plane scenery, Pilsnerish is your man. Oh, that's unfortunate, Rusty. Sorry, just remind me, Papa Echo, is that Inverness? Can't remember. Or is that PN? No, PN's Dundee, isn't it? Or is it Perth? EGP's Perth. That's allowed, Pilsner, isn't it? We're allowed to do that, surely. I'm sure I've seen that on Flight Radar. Inverness, okay. A300's got a lot of potential, Superboy. It's very nicely modelled. The modelling's excellent on it. The systems need a little bit of work and the flight dynamics need a tiny little bit of work, but it's got a lot of potential. You see, I only know Glasgow, Edinburgh and Dundee. Glasgow is EGPF and Edinburgh is EGPH. So we always remembered Glasgow as being poor fellows, and Edinburgh was posh houses, and Aberdeen, there's a Scottish word called duch, which is wet and rainy, so Aberdeen was pretty dreich. So PF, PH and PD are the ones I remember. Well, that's good news, Rusty. 11 hours solo out of 20 hours flying, that's good going. So solo in 9 hours, that's especially good in the Scottish weather. What sort of aircraft are you flying? A Superboy, I grew up in the southwest of Scotland in the Ayrshire coast, on the Ayrshire coast. I haven't lived there for 20 years. I'm in England now, and my wife's from Northern Ireland, so I think my accent tends to come and go quite a little bit. Panda Jim, thanks so much for the follow, and HCI33, thanks for following as well. Much appreciated. If you're keen, come and say hello in the chat, but no pressure. So let's just do the shortcut here. I'm going to go direct to LAFO. There we go. And it is now telling me the runway is 86 miles away. So we don't need to worry about VNAV in the Saab, we can just do our 3 times table and work it out from there. I'm at 18,000 feet. So 3 times 18, what's that? 54? I want to say 54. 54 miles from the runway, we'll start descending. Ah, okay. I love the Tomahawk. The Tomahawk's a fun little airplane. It's a bit... it wags its tail wherever you go. It doesn't have a lot of rudder, but it's a good fun aircraft. 172 is nice. PA-28, it lands alright. It's quite a stable aircraft, the PA-28. Grob 115. Is that the tutor? Yeah, my accent's from all over the place. You'd be hard pressed to guess sometimes. I find that as I go back home, if I go back home and visit my family, my accent tends to come back a little bit, and then I come back down here and nobody at work can understand me for about a week. As long as they can understand me, Pilsner, that's the most important thing. So we said, what, 54 miles from the runway we would descend, and we're at 77 just now. All should be well. I've never had the pleasure of flying a Tutor Superboy. I'd really like to. I flew a Firefly, the T67B model Firefly. That's alright, as long as you don't go super aerobatic in it. I think you get very used to flying in the gusts up there, Rusty. Interesting place to fly, especially with strong southwesterlies. Where would you go for your cross country? Would you go across up to, I guess up to Wick would be one of them. Then maybe down to Dundee for the other. You top up your accent, Pilsner. Yeah, that's what it is. I go to Scotland and buy fried pizza just because it's one of the things you have, and then I feel sick. But you know, you've got to do it. What did I say our schedule was? 10:35? We're a bit tight on the schedule, if I'm being honest. I noticed Pilsner, lots of places around Vancouver have got British names as well. It is very expensive. If you're doing flying in the UK, recreational flying, the cost of fuel per hour is just ridiculous. If you can find somewhere that flies a Rotax 912 powered aircraft, it can be a bit more affordable. But that's unfortunately it gets expensive. I used to fly the gliding club. I used to do aerotowing for the gliding club, and I learned to fly gliders initially, and I found that really helped out because I could do one flying lesson every 1 or 2 weeks, and the gliding club would help fill in, would help keep me current on handling skills. What a way to sell Scottish independence, Amy, huh? Come and have some deep fried Mars bars. Ugh, no thanks. Crunchy pizza? Yeah, it's an acquired taste, that's for sure. Crunchy pizza and vinegar. Gross. Right, descending in 12 miles, and just as a reminder, I'm going to descend roughly on a 3-degree profile, so that's 3 miles per 1,000 feet, and my ground speed is around about 250. It'll go up to about 300, so if I use half of that, 1,500 feet per minute, that should work out. Good kebabs, of course. So in England, Rusty, you're supposed to be able to do GA flying again from the end of March, but only with family members, so I don't know when it'll work out for instructors. Maybe not too long after that. I was looking on Flight Radar today, and lots of the professional training schools are still flying. You can see the CTC aircraft flying around the south coast quite a bit, so maybe there's hope soon. That was his cunning plan, Amy, was it? Yeah. Maybe not. Awesome. So we are going to just basically descend straight down towards the ILS. You've seen a very involving procedural approach. This second flight is just to show you the Saab being made easy and made accessible. So let me go back into the approach chart. We're simply flying direct LAFO. LAFO, we're going to intercept, let's call it 3,000 feet. It's 10 miles out, and then we'll fly down the ILS and land. So that should be straightforward. I'll just dial down 3,000 feet just now. Obviously if we're doing this with live air traffic control, this would be a bit different, but you know, so be it. "3,000 feet VS," and again you can do it down here. You can use the wheel to scroll it down. The problem with the wheel, or the thing I don't get on with the wheel, is you've always got to be heads down to do it. So I have a keyboard binding that does exactly the same thing. And unlike a jet aircraft with the Saab, you don't have to bring the power all the way off in the descent. You're not doing an idle descent really. You can allow the speed to build all the way up to the barber's pole now. What brought you to Scotland, Amy? Was it for school or for university? The Scottish universities were always very good for aerospace kind of stuff. Captain Crashed is not keen on the Scottish cuisine, it turns out. I can't possibly think why. Did you accidentally Google what haggis was and now you're thinking we're just a bit strange? It's just a happy little aircraft. I can't describe it any other way. It's just a happy little machine. I should probably have set my landing elevation rather than talking about pizza and haggis. Let's set that correctly, so not the baro, let's set the altimeter scale. The Scots ruin pizza, that's for sure. Round about there, I'm simply going to put the seatbelt signs on now for Duncan. There we go. Oh, fair enough. I like France. France is a nice country as well. Once you get outside of Paris, I'm not as keen on Paris. The tail light outflow valve has a nice smile. Oh yeah, that's brilliant. It does seem happy. It's like Baymax from Big Hero 6 to a certain extent. Maybe a bit more scary. Oh, that's good fun, Rusty. I've only got a twist grip. I don't have rudder pedals that work, so helicopters are difficult. But a few weeks back I was flying a Gin helicopter, which is like a tip jet, so there's no torque effects on it. That was good fun. So distance to the runway, 42 miles. As we go through 13,000 feet, I need 39 miles. So I think we're roughly on profile. Hopefully we'll be able to do a high-speed approach in the Saab. I should probably set this as well. 279. ILS is set. If I was a proper pilot, I'd be looking at the missed approach, which is Milby 293. And active pass 378 on the next one. Again, this is where the memory feature on these Collins radios is really good. So if you fly the same routes back and forth, like for a virtual airline, that sort of thing, the memory feature's really useful. Our missed approach stop altitude is 3,500 feet. Excellent. Is anybody old enough to remember Airwolf? I think it's impossible to fly a Bell 212 without an Airwolf livery if you remember the TV series. Temperature's -7. Let's put the prop anti-ice and the engine ice protection on. So 11,000 feet, we've got 33 miles to runway. We're bang on the profile. Are we in the US yet? Yeah, we should be. Yep. Oh yes. We're allowed to do this, right? International flight in a commuter, that's fine. Can't be a problem. VATSIM rules apply. Right, anti-ice can go off. 1, 2, 3, 4. My CTOT value for this elevation and temperature is 108. 9,000 feet, 1827, and we've got 29. Yeah, it's looking good. Metro 3. I've only been a passenger in a Metro 3. I can't say it was an enjoyable experience. But yeah, they might be fun to fly. We've got a DME from the ILS as well, that's useful. So 24 miles back. 8,000 feet, 816.24. So yeah, we're more or less there. Oh, the FlyJSim Q400. It's going to be awesome. What was it they called it, Captain Crash? The San Antonio sewer pipe, the Metroliner. Yeah, it's a noisy aircraft. It's not, and it's very narrow as well. It's not a comfortable thing for more than a few minutes. It's one of these kind of, I think of it as a zombie apocalypse aircraft. Like if the zombies are really around the corner, then yeah, you get in a Metro 3 to escape the zombies. Otherwise, maybe not. Might be fun to fly though. I should probably have the landing lights on because I'm in America. I should probably also set that. See, I'm too busy talking on this sector. The lack of workload on the VOR aspect means everything's just out of place at the moment. So usually I'd recommend at 20 miles out being less than 250 knots in a jet and 5,000 feet. We're obviously a lot higher than that and a lot faster than that, but this is the great thing about the Saab. Okay, I'm just going to bring the power back to idle and we'll let it decelerate. For the approach, I'll switch auto coursant on. And we'll switch the bleeds off. The high pressure bleeds off. "5,000 feet would be 15 miles, and that's roughly what we have here. The speed's coming back nicely. 340s are quite noisy on the outside, but they're not as bad inside. What makes a difference on a turboprop is the clearance between the fuselage and the prop disc, and the Saab's a little bit better than the Metro, if I remember correctly. Marginal gains, really. So yeah, if I was flying an Airbus, I would be 20 miles out, 250 knots, and then 15 miles out, about 220 knots, 5,000 feet, and then 4,000 feet. With the Saab, you can simply fly the 3-degree profile all the way down. You don't need to build in a reduced angle of descent to help you slow down. It will comfortably slow down doing the 3-degree profile. In fact, we're under the profile now. You can see the glide slope on the standby instrument here. Okay, so 12 miles out from the ILS, 3,700 feet. There's the runway here. and now it's comfortably back under 200 knots. Yeah, it's got the cargo variant, and also I think it's got the airborne early warning as well, I think. Yeah, I'm sure it's got that as well. He's turning in, just check its sequence is over. 119 is what I wanted. Excellent, it's gone into lock mode, so I'll put approach mode on. You can see the glide slope, so it's just levelling at 3000. Glide slope's coming down, and remember that's already fixed for the next release. You'll have the glide slope back on the ADI and the HSI when the next version comes out, but at the moment it's down here on the standby instrument. So capture the glide slope, we're going to set 3,500 for the missed approach. 5 minutes to schedule, we'll be a few minutes late I think. Bring the power off. We're still at 8 miles, 180 knots. I think it's about, at full fuel, it's about 3 tons, your cargo payload, if I remember correctly. It doesn't carry a lot of fuel either, so you can maybe get maybe 3.5 tons. I don't think it's used for very dense packages. I think it's like a package freighter, like carrying the post and things that are bulky but not heavy. There's 6.5 miles, 180 knots, gear down. Come on, you can do it. There we go. Flaps 15. Oh yes, we're in Canada now, Pilsnerish. Flaps 20, props coming up. We'll hold 140 with about 30 odd percent, 35%. Once we get below 1,000 feet, I'll just bring it back to about 25% torque, and should work out. Yeah, it's 34 people, so for 34 people you expect it to carry about 90 kilos per person, plus a little bit for baggage. So it should have no problem at all with 3.5 tons. It's not the fastest aircraft in the world, so sector's up to a couple of hours, maybe 500 miles. They operate from Scotland to Stansted on a reasonably regular basis, but some of them do 4 hours as well, but I think they're empty for that. Right, we've got gear down, 3 greens, landing flap, props are up, auto caution is on, bleeds are off. Good to go. Right, so I'm just going to set the torque down to around about 25. I'll take the autopilot out, and again I'll keep following those flight directors. Just a touch out of trim there. I'm quite excited about the VC-10 for sure. I used to fly that freeware one in Flight Sim 2004 an awful lot. So remember, with the Saab we don't want to make an abrupt power reduction, we want to make a considered power reduction as we go into the flare. With any sim aircraft, if you're having trouble landing it, it's for the same reason as people have trouble landing real aircraft, and that's because they stare at the touchdown point, they look at their vertical speed indicator, as opposed to looking at the far end of the runway. So we're not trying to butter it, we're not trying to grease it on as we say in the UK, we're simply looking at the runway, looking at the rate of descent, and trying to arrest the flare, arrest the rate of descent and put the aircraft in the touchdown zone. So there's 50 feet, looking at the far end, pitching up slowly, smoothly bringing the power off, and just holding the attitude until she touches down. On the ground, into reverse, set the nose down gently, and max reverse. I'm thinking about the VC-10, I'll see how it turns out. Can ease out of max reverse now. Nice and slowly. It's a beautiful aircraft to land. It lands really nicely. The previous version, 1.5, the version that was out for about 2.5 years, I think, that was interesting. It was a little bit unstable in yaw. Slow down a little bit with the brakes. It was a little bit unstable in yaw, but it touched down beautifully. And this version replicates that without the yaw instability. So I've been having a lot of fun with it. 1.61 flies beautifully. Really nicely. Right, flaps coming up. Auto coursing can go off. We can put the weather radar off. Actually, let's put the gust locks in. That's what real pilots would do. Gust locks go in, weather radar, and then you can turn it on. That's fine. Turn that off. We can have the landing lights off, the strobes off, the taxi lights on. We get a bit of a taxi in, so I'll switch off the windshield heating and the standby pitot. That gives us a caution, but no issues on the ground. And we'll be done in just a few minutes, folks. So this is your last chance for any questions on the Saab. As I said, we're very privileged to have Jim, one of the developers, in the chat this evening. If he's still here, if you do have any questions, I'm sure he'd love to answer them. I'm going to take the right here. I think we can fit down here. Failing that, we'll have to do a U-turn. CL650 pilot, yeah, thanks very much. High praise indeed. I may be too big for this taxiway. It may have gone entirely fine until we got to this taxiway. Ah no, it'll be just about okay. Thanks Jim, I really appreciate you popping in on the stream. As I said, it's nice to have the developer, one of the developers here, and it's really nice. I'm happy to show this aircraft off because I really like this aircraft. My YouTube channel and the Twitch streams, I don't do them for view counts. I don't do them to get the maximum number of people into the channel, and I don't use clickbaits. I just show aircraft that I have fun with in the hope that I can share that enjoyment with other people, and the Saab gives me exactly that aircraft. You know, it's an aircraft that I have so much fun flying. Because it can do so much. You can fly anywhere in the world with it, and it's just nicely modelled. You know, Goran's modelling after all these years still stands up, and the systems are spot on. See if I can find the parking stand though. Good luck with that, Winston. Good luck. Was it stand 7? We are going to be 1 minute behind schedule. That's not too bad considering that the pushback took a little bit longer than expected. I'm going to turn the taxi light off. What have I not done? CTOT's off, the auto coursing's off, the probe heaters are off. I try and stream on Friday nights, Superboy. It really depends how work is going or is not going. So at the moment I'm fairly quiet at work, shall we say, for fairly obvious reasons. But yeah, Friday nights I try to. Let's use the external view for the parking one more time. I don't think it'll have a 750 3D integration, Superboy, but there's every possibility it will work with the 2D integration. Right, the parking brake is set. I'll go to ground idle. So let's switch some things off. Transponder, we'd normally put that to the conspicuity code, but that's fine for just now. We'll have the recircs off. We'll have the packs off. The HPs are already off. We'll have the emergency exit lights to disarmed. Avionics can go off. Generators can go off, and we'll bring the props back to the feather range. Min, feather. Make sure the props do go down to feather, and then into cut off. No differential pressure. That's off. That's off. And we're back at home base, so the ground support equipment will work again. Check the props are spinning down, they are, and we'll have the beacon off, seatbelts off. Let's put the external power in. And have I done everything? Yeah, I should do. Right, lock, latch, push. Last chance to hear these doors. Duncan's going to check the prop stopped, that's good. Door opens, ladders. Let's have a look round the back. Sometimes Goran leaves little Easter eggs in his aircraft. I don't know if this one's got anything. I think you can open the back. There we go. Can we open it? Oh, there we go. This is an 8-year-old model. This is a, 2013 they started making this. There you go, folks. That's the Saab 340A by Leading Edge Simulations from Victoria to Kelowna, procedurally with the radio aids and then straight lining it back with the GPS. I hope you enjoyed the stream. It's a little bit longer than I intended, but I wanted to show you both facets of the Saab. If you don't have it, I strongly recommend it, simply down to the fact that the developers have shown so much dedication to the community in keeping this aircraft up to date for so long. There's a version 2 that they're working on as well, although there's no timescales for any of that. Goran, the 3D developer, also works with Toto from Hotstart, and Jim has his own models on the X-Aviation store as well, so they're all worth checking out. The Saab especially, though, is top quality work. This is by far the happiest little airliner in X-Plane, as I said at the very beginning. Folks, thanks very much for hanging around with the stream. Really appreciate it. Thanks to all the new subscribers this evening, and especially thanks to the developer Jim and Airfighter as well for popping in on the stream this evening. Have a super weekend. Stay safe. Keep your fingers crossed that the summer is going to be better than last summer. I hope it is, and I hope you join me again next week. Thanks very much, folks.